Welcome, trainers, to the PokéSphere. We're your destination for in-depth Pokemon news, community discussions, and editorial content. We're passionate about this franchise, and we're here to share our insights and connect with fellow fans. So let's talk Pokemon.
What's up, guys? I have been forced into being the lead on this. I'm sure, as many of you are aware, the Nintendo of America have filed for a subpoena and given it to Discord, or however the terminology goes, because of that Tera leak. And that holds quite a few implications. They seem to be looking for the actual guy, or it seems to be more about the guy who leaked the stuff than the actual hack on Game Freak. And I have a little theory that they decided to file the suit as Nintendo of America to try and force Discord's hand, because as I'm sure some of you are aware, some others might not, so this might just be a little bit of extra information, but Discord is headquartered in San Francisco, if I'm not mistaken, and it's easier to get a judge to force a company to hand over, in this case, specific user details if they are in the same country, as opposed to if, like, Nintendo Japan or Game Freak had tried to go this route, even if Discord themselves try to block the subpoena with, user privacy agreements, and just depending how strict that is. As of recording, all of the leak servers have been essentially nuked off the face of the earth. I think guys just got scared, rightly so, because this holds a lot of implications, not just for guys who actually leaked the information, but also some of your favorite YouTubers, because depending on how the unlawful sharing of copyright material is defined in the suit and the subpoena, you could see actually go down if they were in these servers and actually covered these leaks on their channels. Just as an example,
It's one thing when copyright information is released and it actually does some sort of damage to the intellectual property, but when that intellectual property isn't giving any sort of information, anything, there's an argument to be had here that somebody, even though the copyrighted images and information was obtained unlawfully, these leaks probably kept the intellectual property continued throughout this year. They didn't give us a hype season, they didn't give us anything, and the only thing we really had to be excited about was this unlawfully obtained and leaked information.
Yeah, so I suppose, there is definitely two sides to this argument. There is definitely a good side, there is definitely a bad side, and I think the good side is all the stuff that came out on Twitter that I saw, at least, was for older games, so there was nothing for the newer games, and it was essentially just breaking down like the process of how they make the games, which as a technical person I really enjoyed. And with Pokemon being one of my favorite franchises, it actually helped garner a deeper appreciation of the franchise. Do I think it's right? No, not particularly. But yeah, unfortunately Nintendo, obviously as a company, they have to look after themselves and have to make an example that this can't keep happening. So
I think the important thing to keep in mind is there's going to be two sides to the story, and I watch a lot of audit videos that they go into court cases and they do a bit of a deep dive on how laws are interpreted. Now, as far as the person responsible for hacking into Nintendo and pulling this information, I can understand why Nintendo wants to go after them. They have every legal right to. Let's be honest. They did something illegal. They need to be prosecuted if Nintendo feels that it's worth it. Now, as for the information that's being disseminated, or that was disseminated, I was in one of these servers. Recently, it got nuked. I won't reveal what server it was, out of respect for the server people. And, this, I'm looking at this as my First Amendment right of freedom of press. I get to protect my sources. But Nintendo, if they're going to go after anybody, and let's just say for starters, they go after this hacker, they also have to prove damages inflicted because of the hacker's actions. Now, there's effectively at least two different crimes here in play. The one for hacking into the system and the one for disseminating the information where they want to prove damages. Now, like you guys had stated, we had nothing this year for Pokemon. It was crickets. And the only thing that we actually had to savor were these Tera leaks. And Nintendo really can't claim damages on that because it's what kept their IP in the forefront of people's minds especially when they started leaking all this stuff. Now, there was some stuff about Typhlosion that, yeah, could have caused some damage. I don't think it dealt a lot of, if any. It may have soured some people out, you know, and Nintendo can claim that's damage. Fair enough. But overall, I don't think these Tera leaks hurt the brand in any way, shape, or form. As a matter of fact, I think these Tera leaks actually help propel some momentum forward in looking forward to the new games, and gave people insight in the creative process of how these games are made. I don't really see objectively how this damaged Game Freak in any way, shape, or form, but they're gonna argue this no matter what. At this point, we're just kind of in a wait and see pattern. And this also falls for me too, because like I said, I was in one of these servers. It might not have been the named server, but I was in one of these servers that had access to this information. I saw the information. A lot of people saw this information. And I mean, we took the stance of not showing any information, not talking about this information, not about it directly. And this was kind of the reason why. And again, you know, it was thanks to the fact that I had good counsel in Chase, and we discussed this to a good length, and we've came to the conclusion that it was actually better for us not to discuss those leaks directly. And now we see the aftermath of things, and I'm kind of glad we didn't do it.
It's a bit of a weird situation. There's no way that they'll ever find the hacker, because I suspect that the hacker and the person who passed on the information would be two completely different people, or even a group of people. So I think that's why they're specifically going after the leaker. And, you know, there's bigger implications here, because the data that was stolen wasn't just game development files, it was personnel details as well. So I think Nintendo are going to try and spin it that way, because, like, as you said, there was no real direct damages. I mean, it's not like it would affect sales or anything even close to that. So it is quite a grey situation, because no one really knows what's going on. But interestingly enough, Draco mentioned that he was in one of the Discord servers, and Nintendo has screenshots of the chats from one of these particular servers. It's called the Freak League server. I don't have an issue sharing that, because it is kind of public at this point, so everybody pretty much knows which server it was. But Draco had said when we were planning to get together that he might not be able to make it, and he used some excuse I don't really believe, because we know that Draco is our resident Nintendo head of the board of investors, and I suspect that he had a meeting to talk about this with his fellow investors on the board. So it all seems a bit fishy.
I wish I was on the board of investors.
Exactly what an undercover would say.
There's nothing I will ever be able to say to decline this, right? You guys will just never believe me.
It's just all too convenient.
You get a couple of good guesses in, and all of a sudden you're the Nintendo insider.
I don't know, when you get like 9 out of 10 of your guesses in quotation marks correct.
Lately it's been more like 4 out of 10.
Oh, that's just because you're trying to get down a bit.
See, there it
I have
goes.
to give him a lot of credit for playing off the fact that he had no idea over this entire situation, even though he knew exactly what the meeting he was coming from was all about before we even started to record this.
Oh yeah, man's probably still sitting there in his suit. He's got his pile of paper-bound documents next to him.
Oh yeah.
That's what that black folder is.
Anyway.
So Chase, Draco, I'm sure a lot of listeners might be wondering, what could this mean for somebody who might have stumbled upon this leak information, not actually trying to put it into the zeitgeist like that, but maybe shared it with a friend or something over text messages? Like, how far removed from the source of the leak should people that had and or shared this information really be concerned?
Realistically, that would take a lot of work and money from their end. Okay, we know Nintendo isn't, their pockets are pretty deep, so they've got the money to drag this out for decades if they wanted to. But if you got it, let's say from the leak itself, the implications would be a bit more harsh. If you found it on Twitter and you just shared it with a mate and you're like, Joe, look at this, have you seen this? This is crazy. I don't really think there's much of a standing there, because as it stands now, Nintendo are only going after Discord and user details and IPs and all of that. They would actually have to subpoena Twitter if they wanted to take it further, which I don't think they're going to do. Which also makes me a bit scared for YouTubers, and why I brought them up, because if there are any YouTubers in that server and they covered it on their YouTube channel, which is very much public, and a lot of them show their faces and stuff, and they got their business emails and that in their bios, those are the guys who realistically should be the most scared.
Again, it comes down to, let's put it this way, because they're going through the US. I don't know how other countries do laws, but here, if you accept material, let's just say, for example, I break into X's house, I take his TV, I hand it to Chase, and Chase knows that I stole it from X. Chase is just as guilty as me for accepting stolen material if he knows for a fact that it was stolen. Now, if he did not know, he has a level of plausible deniability that would grant him some immunity from being charged with a crime. This is kind of similar. Someone broke into Game Freak, grabbed a whole bunch of files, shared them to people. These people knowingly accepted and used that information to disseminate out into public. They accepted knowing information that was stolen. For anybody who did use these actual screenshots and made videos and even made a profit, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're also not so much in the crosshairs. We made nothing. We didn't cover anything. We make no money. This project is a labor of love. So damage-wise, Nintendo didn't make anything. However, other PokeTubers who did cover this, who did make money on ad revenue, they're actually a lot closer to being in deep waters, and they might want to consider talking to somebody, because it all depends on how Nintendo's lawyers choose to advance this issue. They're either going to go after Discord and the main leaker. They're going to go after, they could in theory go after PokeTubers for disseminating the same information out, knowing that it was a leaked, stolen image. There's a bit.
So the lesson here to all you aspiring YouTube Pokemon champions is to always speak in uncertainty about any information that doesn't have an official Nintendo stamp of approval.
Pretty much.
So I've just sent you guys images of one of the documents that I saw. So it's the Freak League server, and they're looking for Game Freak out. But what's interesting is they're looking for phone number, email address, ID, government name.
It's because they're trying to connect it to an actual legal identity, or what in the conspiracy circles would be identified as a straw man, which is going to be your social security number and your government identity associated to your personal identity in the United States of America.
This is also the thing which also makes it a bit dicey for me is, what if the leaker isn't from the US and lives in one of the countries that doesn't expedite to the US?
Oh, that'd be the ideal situation, or at least reroute all your information while you're doing the hacking through those countries.
So this is one of the reasons why whenever you're signing up for any kind of service, and I mean any kind of service, be it Steam, be it Discord, any kind of social media platform, you read that EULA. That EULA is important because in some cases, a EULA will turn around and tell you, hey, if the police come knocking on our door and they ask us for stuff, we are going to turn over information. Versus if police come to our door and knock on it, we don't know who you are. Sorry. Like these are things that are actually in EULAs, and it's important. This is why it's also important to read your EULAs. If you don't read it, say you agree to it, you are subject to the rules of that platform, Discord included. So if Discord is going to turn around and just drop all of our information, and you have to put some information to join Discord, there's going to be things, and it's going to come down to a lot of the user agreements, because I've not gone through it. I don't know if Discord's EULA says they're going to just hand over info.
Well, that's also the thing. Reading the user and license agreements is a good idea, but you actually also have to take that time to understand it, because reading and understanding are two completely different things. So if you do read it and you're unsure about these things, and someone it might be a bit short, just ask questions. Make sure everything is above board and you don't get yourself into sticky situations.
So that's a great segue. I just want to kind of slip in sort of a disclaimer for some of the ideas, especially some of the points that I brought up with what the leakers might have been doing to work around. Don't do any of this. It's dumb to try to do any sort of data crimes or anything. It usually comes with a high risk because of the technologies and safe places involved. as the internet has evolved over the past 10, 15 years. Be safe, protect yourself, and be smart. Don't do what these people did, even though it seemed like it might have saved the IP for the year. That said, how long was the account that the supposed leaker released this information for existed? Because honestly, why would you disseminate this information from anything that you've had any personal investment in whatsoever? I'd think of it like needing a disposable phone in order to make a bad call or something like that. I'd think that they'd probably use an entire proxy situation in order to make the account that they planned on disseminating the information with. Unless they're absolutely daft.
Proxies ain't gonna save you.
You knew what I meant by that.
I hate you. You just unlocked my nerd side. The nerd neurons are firing.
You just activated my nerd card.
So it was up for quite a while, I believe. Because the actual leaker, it didn't, not like he leaked everything all at once. It sort of trickled out, or rather flowed out, because it was a bit faster than a trickle. But that's the thing. There's not really much you can do unless you have very specialized knowledge to hide yourself on the internet. Because proxies have an ID, but proxies have to be registered with someone, either a company or an individual. So that would lead to your original IP. And with that original IP, your name is attached to that. There'll have to be contact details such as an email or a phone number. So security on the internet itself is not as straightforward as people think it is. There's a lot of holes. Some of them are probably about as big as the Grand Canyon, and you can just walk straight through and basically knock on the person's door.
I mean, that kind of brings up my disclaimer point is don't do stupid things, because a lot of the stuff, there's no legal way, it seems, for you to protect yourself in order to do illegal things. Every aspect of that's going to be somehow illegal.
But that also brings up my next point is the guys who deleted all of these servers, the various owners or whatever, however you want to refer to them as, they've basically just painted targets on their backs. Because my theory again, they deleted it out of fear, which, you know, is justifiable. But
Admittance.
yeah, that basically just says, oh no, we've done something wrong, or we've been a part of something wrong that's been done, and Nintendo's going after these people, let's try and disappear. You cannot disappear from the internet unless you go and become like a homesteader and you never touch a piece of technology connected to the internet ever again.
Let's put it this way. All right. We as content creators understand the risk of being in these servers. We understand the risk of regurgitating this information to the public. It's not a new thing that Nintendo has gone after other servers in the past, have gone after content creators in the past who have leaked this information. It isn't the first time this has happened, and in all honesty, if I was to turn around and say, oh, you know, I didn't know. No, you did know. You were willingly participating. Like, even I myself, like, if they were to come knock on my door right now and say, hey, we have a couple of questions, I'll be like, all right, what do you want to know? But I'm also smart enough to know when to answer and when not to answer. And again, because we have, in fact, taken the stance of not disseminating this information, I've got an extra layer of protection where it's like, prove that I personally caused damages. Prove that my channel caused damages. We didn't talk about it. We even said, hey, there are other people covering it. Let them cover it. We're going to be talking about how, why, after, and the effects of. But we're not talking about the information. So where are the damages? Just because I was there doesn't mean I broke a law. And that's the other thing. I'm sorry, but that is the other thing. It's hey, look, yes, I was there. Do I know who was on that server? Couldn't tell you. Why? Because I didn't care enough to look. I saw information, I nodded, I moved on. But I couldn't tell you for a fact who was on that server. I can't answer that question, not truthfully.
Yeah, and I think I always talk about objectivity, and I think that's one of the main benefits of taking an objective standpoint is you sort of put yourself in a better position to you know, just scream plausible deniability, because you can be like, yeah, I was interested, but like I didn't really partake, if that sort of makes sense.
Well, here's an interesting point to come off of that. Some of you might actually be able to thank Twitter account Cardinhill, Cardnih, however that last part might be pronounced, for the incredible art for the concept based off of some of the leaks and the information Like, that has to add some sort of plausible deniability. In fact, their Mega Feraligator. Their Mega Feraligator leak, as a joke, had a blue filter over it, and people took it and ran. Major news sources were putting that on search engine front pages as this is the leaked Mega form for Feraligator. Now, this is like a backward sort of situation to the leak thing that sort of could give some plausible deniability for anyone who might have shared something that was flagged as a leak that they just kind of wrote off as a similar situation to Fakemon artists trying to ride the hype train.
Yeah, I suppose that goes back to what I was saying about reigniting that passion for the franchise that I sort of thought was dwindling a little bit. Like, let's be honest, we as Pokemon fans are used to getting something quite often, as opposed to guys who are fans of other video games or other genres. I think once that flow of information stops, people they get either bored or bitter.
The problem is this, all right? When it comes to the Fakemon stuff, even Fakemon based on alleged information. Number one, Nintendo has to prove that the information received was legitimate and not someone's, daydream. Because at the end of the day, you really can't prove what's real and what's not. And it was one of my argument pieces as well. Okay, so-and-so says they have insider information, they leak information out. But for all you know, they took something of truth. Let's say, let's go back to the Ben Affleck leak. I thought it was fake because they turned around and said Meowth was going to be an elongated cat and you were going to get a fat Pikachu. The rest of that rumor seemed pretty solid, except for those two bits. And that, for me, was like, this is bunk. Turns out it was true.
I'm in the opposite camp for the Affleck leak. I thought it was so ridiculous compared to the other quote-unquote leaks that we were getting that one had to be real.
But the same could be in reverse, though. Like, okay, cool. 10 people said that Feraligator was going to be, let's just say, for argument's sake, I don't know for a fact, I'm prefacing this, but let's just say Feraligator was water steel, okay? And he's getting a mega form. Okay, and he's going to have giant blades on his arms, and he's going to have one mohawk on his head. That description is going to spark a bunch of different ideas. One of them is going to hit. Whether or not it was real or not, no one knows. Why? Because it's a bit of a lie mixed in the truth, or a bit of truth mixed in a lie. No one will ever know until it's actually revealed. And by then, what damage would it have done to Nintendo? And that's kind of the thing when it comes to these quote-unquote leaks and rumors. All right. We know for a fact, because of the data that was disseminated, that this was legitimate files, that we had legitimate source code. Okay, fine, I'll grant you that. However, what we don't know is how much of it was truth. It could have been 10%, it could have been 50%, it could have been 100%. We don't know for sure because we're not the ones that had the information firsthand. And Nintendo pushing forward with this kind of says, no, all of it was true, which means the good and the bad that we saw was legitimate.
That's a very solid point. Like, them going through with this is almost just as an admittance as the leakers nuking their servers. Things could have been in uncertainty, and now they just kind of are forcing people to assume it's all certain. I didn't think of that. That's a great point.
People are very brave to try and screw with Nintendo and the companies associated with them, like Game Freak, because Nintendo does own a third of Pokemon, if I'm not mistaken. Because we've seen Nintendo go after people for less. I mean, for Sword and Shield, there was a guidebook that leaked, and the person who leaked the guidebook, like, I don't even know who buys guidebooks anymore. Living in the age that we do, where you can just go onto Google and find out whatever you want in a matter of seconds for free.
It's something tactile about it, because I like books. I'm not a big digital guy.
I like them when they had the Pokédex in them.
Yeah, that too.
those are really good. So, something as simple as a guidebook, which, I get it falls under the same preface. It hadn't been released and stuff like that. But that guy who leaked that, can't remember if it was a man or a woman, but they are now in generational debt, because I think they got whacked with $150,000 fine or something, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, they got hammered.
That is a lot of money. For some people it might not be, but for the majority of people around the world, you couldn't pay that back in your lifetime. I know I wouldn't have been able to.
I think my response would be get in line. There's someone else who got there first.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, again, it boils down to people knowing that they committed a crime, other people knowing this crime was committed and still partaking in the after effects of that crime and trying to profit off of it. Because that's really what it came down to.
Oh, no, 100%. And it is quite a sad thing to see, but it is the reality.
I mean,
Everything's about money.
I get it. YouTubers struggle. PokéTubers struggle, especially when there's nothing to talk about. But this was one of those things where it was just like, look, guys, we are pretty damn close to the pulse. Maybe we should just shut up about it and just revel in the fact that we have a no, and, you know, our inner circle can have a nice little, ooh, that's cool moment. But I think the moment they went out and broadcast that, that was the mistake. Because the moment they threw it out into the internet, into the air, it was over. Nintendo saw dollar bills. They knew they had to go hunt somebody down. They could have stayed quiet. It could have even just been as rumors at best. But in the chase for clout and in the chase for money, this is what happened. And again, I was tempted. I'm not going to lie. I was really, really tempted because I wanted to see us grow. But smarter people prevailed. I'm thankful that I had good counsel to talk me out of it and gave me damn good reasons why. And the risk versus reward just wasn't worth it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the areas that we benefit, being that we operate as a group.
I mean, I don't want to see anything bad happen to anybody. I don't wish ill on anyone. But at the same time, you knew what could happen when you made that choice.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, well, a lot of our viewers might not know this, but like Draco and I very often have very opposing viewpoints. I'm very stubborn, so I hardly ever budge. And sometimes it seems like Draco is sort of the same on his viewpoints. And then we just have X there who's like a hype man, hyping both of us up. He's just keeping the vibes going.
I'm like that one dude in the Godzilla movie. Let them fight.
Sarazawa.
So yeah, so I think that's where we benefit the most, is there's four of us with very different viewpoints, which actually makes decision making both simultaneously very hard and a lot easier.
Well, I mean, the grand scheme of things is because of the way we have always operated as a channel. It's not one person making the decision, it's a communal decision. It's always been a communal decision. Like, it may be one person coming up with ideas for a video and then just pulling the trigger on it. But when it comes to something as controversial and as potentially devastating as talking about these leaks, this is where how we function works better, because as much as a bunch of us were like, that could be really good content, that could really put us on the map, at the same time it was, do we want to be in the crosshairs of Nintendo? Can we afford to be in the crosshairs of Nintendo? Can we afford to stoke their ire? In the grand scheme of it is, no, we cannot afford to. Therefore, we have to step away from this information. We chose not to talk about it. We chose not to share it, even though I had my finger on that pulse. I could have just shoved all of the information. I could have copied all of that information, which I did not. And I'm going to state this openly. I did not copy any information. I did not copy any screenshots. I don't have anything from that server, so don't ask. At the same time, I'm glad that we didn't, because this is the reason why we didn't. We don't want to be in the crosshairs of Nintendo. We don't want to put ourselves in that dangerous predicament where the next thing we know, all of us are getting hit with lawsuits that we can never pay out.
The guys who do mess with Nintendo have some pretty big huevos.
I don't know, it's been going through my head the entire time, so I'm just gonna throw this into the recording. So, like right here, ever since he said, about how we operate as a whole group, I've been sitting here like, because we're the Poké-Tiers, you could be one too, because supporting our channel is the thing to do. Hit like and subscribe.
Okay,
I love you.
X is upgraded from hype man to cheerleader. So there we go.
The power is yours.
I love you, dude. I love you so much. I mean, what else is there to say about this topic? I mean, we know Nintendo's going to be looking for someone or a group of people or, a whole conglomerate of people potentially everybody on that server's got a target on their back. It may have been a server I've been on. I don't know because they changed the name before they nuked it. So I have the new name, not the old name. And so, yeah, that's going to be fun. I may or may not be getting a phone call for all I know. But at the end of the day, it might just come down to the fact that did we show anything? Did we add to that conversation? No, we did not. We talked about the aftermath. We talked about the possible issues that would arrive from this type of thing.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway from this episode, if anything, is just be smart about what you do on the internet. Because, you know what, there's a lot of things people do on the internet that they think are above board, but are actually heavily illegal. And for those of you thinking, you know what, I've never done any of those things, this doesn't apply to me, you're exactly who it applies to. And I say this with 100% seriousness. It's not if you get caught, it is when you get caught. And it is very easy to find out who you are. Doesn't matter what country you live in, doesn't matter what the laws are. You mess up, you're gonna have to pay for it.
Yeah, for sure. And depending on your country, the laws may really hit you harder than you expect.
Okay, so Draco did cut off. It wasn't me that just went deaf.
Yeah, Draco's experiencing technical difficulties.
The Nintendo Bot 10,000 is crashing.
They're scrambling him so that when they separate communications, they're coming after him. I guess with that, we're going to wrap up this video. Chase and I have to get, however we're planning on doing this, to go rescue our guy Draco. Tune in next time. Until then, keep up the love of Pokemon. Keep being an awesome trainer.
Also, be sure to share, like, subscribe, join our Discord. And as always,
We'll see you in the next video.